make my living from the trucking industry or the shipping industry, but I'll tell you what, my oldest son went and spent his first job fighting fires in our state forests is right after high school. Very first job, big job for him, and is now currently working as a mechanic on fleets that go out into our woods, and they're out on power lines he's on the California wildfires this last summer, and risking his life for his community and another form of type of service from our family. And so I'm here as a mom and as somebody who loves what he's doing and sees a future and passion in it. But, I've also had the pleasure of being where you sit and not on this side of the building. But, Oregon for a long time has sought to reduce carbon emissions and try to be a leader. And we've had some ups and downs with that as a state. We've had some good programs that have worked, some of the residential energy tax programs, although maybe not swimming pools, solar panels for rich people, but by and large, the program has worked. But we also had some boondoggles like the Betsy credits, which cost taxpayers a lot of money and also wound up with some fraudulent-ish transactions and a few people who went up in prison over that program. Most recently, Oregon said they want to, we took votes in this building about coal-fired power plants, and now energy companies are saying the unintended consequences, they're not ready, and that could cause grid disruptions. And I think a lot of times Oregon kind of gets ahead of its skis on things. And honestly, I can go through billions of dollars of programs that we thought were good ideas that didn't work. And so I look at this bill as another one of those types of programs. And I want to be really clear. Timber Unity today on the steps awarded both Republican and Democratic lawmakers courage awards for standing up and for, standing with the working Oregonians. And you don't have to, we're nonpartisan. Our founder was a registered Democrat when he started this organization. So this was not an R or D issue. This is really about a checkbook issue. It's about a workforce issue. My son, who's out fighting fires, is an 8th generation Oregonian. My kids are talking about leaving this state. And I look at the types of jobs that, they're interested in, and I don't want to see them leave this state. But I grew up here, and I grew up in Washington County. And back in the day, when you looked at the shared border of Washington and Clatsop counties, they were pretty equal. They had shared prosperity. And now you look at that, Ford Family Foundation, go look at the 2019 Ford Family Foundation numbers and look at the income inequality on the county lines that share a border. You can drive from one county to the next, and one county has about a $40,000 annual cost family income, and the other county, $70,000. And in Salem today, you could get gas for $2.48, but you go up to the North Coast, and it's already $3.32 a gallon. They're already paying 80 cents more a gallon before a bill like this, before a low carbon fuel standard that we passed in 2015 goes further into effect and drives those prices. And I want to be really clear, and we told this to Governor Brown today, Timber Unity is not an organization that is out there saying climate change is hocus pocus or that it doesn't exist or that we don't need to do something about it. But we are saying that, and I'll be honest, between law school books and trying to keep up on this bill, it's a lot of reading and there's a lot of amendments. But the governor was pretty clear today that the net impact of this bill is still, it will raise energy prices. And we asked the governor before we left, we said, is Senate Bill 1530 really about fixing carbon, or is it about raising revenue? And she looked us in the eye and she said, it's about fixing carbon. Well, if it is, then can we find ways to address carbon that don't require complex schemes that are based on Oregon's history, highly likely to fail, and to cost taxpayers money? We have other programs that have passed that operate in a shroud of secrecy, and I heard Senator Barrett Sugar and talking today about concerns about transparency, and you can see that in our CCO system where we don't have access to public records for tax managed programs. So we want to talk, though, about making sure that we do address this, because I want my kids to have 9th generation Oregonians. I'm the last of my siblings to be here. My whole family's picked up and left the state. My dad, my mom, my brothers, my sisters, I'm it. I'm sure there's some people who wish I'd leave the state too, but at the end of the day, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight for my, for my friends and my family. So we brought you some data we asked the governor, Angelita asked the governor, how much carbon do you want to sequester? And the governor's office this last fall never really got back to us. But I dug through some DEQ records, and we kind of did the math ourselves, and we've provided that up on OLIS for you. Thank you, committee services. And essentially, to get to the 1990 levels and to reduce, down to a 45% cut, we have to cut from today 36.25 million metric tons of carbon. It's about 79, almost 80 billion pounds of carbon by 2035. So annualized, that's about 2.41 million metric tons or 5.3 billion pounds. So for the folks listening at home, to get there, it's about 50 million trees a year we have to plant. So we want to look at 4 tactics that we hope this committee will consider as a way that are either cost neutral or we can tap in some bonding dollars to address, but we think we get there and we match your numbers, but without having to put people like Angelita out of work, put Shelley's trucks at risk. Shelley didn't mention that, she recently made a $150,000 investment in an upgraded truck. Not every person in Oregon can upgrade their fleet. And, if at 22 cents a gallon for Angelita, she didn't tell you, it's $11,000 a year for her 3 trucks. That's the difference between money she takes home for her family and money that will go to some program. So the first thing we want to talk about is developing and executing a right-of-way carbon sink plan. ODOT controls over 8,000 road miles in this state, and when you look at right-of-way miles, it's about 16,000. So if you just put in 3 trees every 5 linear feet, you're talking about enough trees to meet the carbon sequestration goals if you put in the right varieties. And we know you can't put big tall trees always everywhere near the freeway, but right now the taxpayers are paying to mow those right of ways. So from no offense to some of my friends in the room who don't mind the pesticide issue, but we pay to put pesticides on those right of ways. We pay to put chemicals to maintain them. We could look at carbon sink vegetation and, where appropriate, carbon sink trees, and actually use every ounce of right of way in the state without getting into state parks, without getting into other public lands, and creating a carbon sink that would actually reach your goal without doing anything else. The second thing we're interested in is reducing road miles through public procurement. If you've ever served alcohol in this state, they teach you that 1.5 ounces of hard alcohol is equal to 5 ounces of beer is equal to 12 ounces, or 12 ounces of beer and 5 ounces of wine. You can do the same for a gallon of diesel. A gallon of diesel is going to get you on average 6 road miles, and it will also expend 22.38 pounds of carbon. So we believe that a piece of this is reducing road miles. And one of the first and fastest places we can do that is through our public procurement system. It is shocking and appalling that the Department of Corrections hauls their food in from vendors in Miami and expends one round trip 24,000 pounds of carbon. It is shocking and appalling that when we fixed the Port of Portland and they did the concrete project, they brought the concrete in from China. So when we look at the hamburger meat vendor from Portland who can get to the Salem DOC in 45 minutes and only use 300 pounds of carbon, why isn't he the low-cost bid? And folks, I know that people get a little squirrely on things like, buy local because of interstate commerce issues. But if there's truly a public health cost to carbon and the results of greenhouse gas emissions, then factoring that in should become part of the low-cost bid. It also has an upside that the guy in Miami isn't paying Oregon income taxes, but the vendor in Portland will. So we see a positive impact to the general fund as well as that.
Julie, if you could just take a couple more minutes.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Thanks.
Senator. We were told we had a little bit more than just 2 minutes each, so I will hustle through this.
You do have more than, but 15 minutes total.
Well, we're getting there. I'll hustle through. But also with regard to asset management, Oregon needs to have robust ports and river access for shipping. What happened at the Port of Portland put just a boat ton of carbon into the environment with trucks on the road. You all as policymakers need to rewrite the statutes that futuristically anybody who is a private entity or their labor that has a contract with ports cannot ever shut us down again. That can't happen. And we support reopening the Willamette Falls lock so that we can divert truck traffic off of our freeways and onto our rivers, which will also reduce carbon. The third point that we offered Governor Brown and we offer you today is that we need to invest in recycling infrastructure. In 2011, I voted with some of you to expand Oregon's bottle bill, but the dirty little secret of Oregon's bottle bill is that we don't recycle those materials here. The aluminum goes to the East Coast or sometimes goes to China, as does most of the plastic and other materials. I think glasses might be one of the only things that we actually have some capacity for. Additionally, when the last wood products recycler in the metro area shut down a few years ago, metro government said, well, we'll take those wood products and I guess we're going to have to put them in the landfill. That is the most shameful use of our forests, is to see our wood products wind up in the landfill and not become purposed into something else. And lastly, when I had an opportunity to convene composters, because of course we've encouraged curbside composting, what's really interesting to me, and it goes back to the procurement piece, is that our composters say that our government entities don't even buy from them, not hardly, and ODOT doesn't spec the materials. So as an organization, the state government, and all of the local political subdivisions that go with it, you have the largest purchasing power in the state. Use it to reduce road miles, and you will get to where you need to be for carbon emission reductions. The last piece, and it's a little bit of a wonky tax thing, you know, rather than tax credits and subsidies, and, you know, we heard the governor today say that we'll offset low-income people with a tax rebate. Well, you know, if you're poor and you're paying for gas today and gas is expensive, you don't need to wait 14 months for your tax return to come back. That is complex and bureaucratic, and it makes no sense. So rather than a tax stick, we offer the proverbial carrot, and particularly for organizations that can, like Shelley's company, occasionally make upgrades, we would like to see at Timber Unity that through the tax code that you allow accelerated depreciation for the purpose of making those investments, that instead of spreading the tax deduction of the depreciation over a 7 or 10 or even 15-year period, that you give that tax depreciation up front so that those folks who can make the investments will make the investments. They recoup their cash much quicker. And we hold small firms like Angelita's harmless from these types of environmental policies, because you know what? I don't want her on Medicaid for $10,000 a year for her family. You know, you're about to take $11,000 if this bill passes and take that out of her pocket just so you can wind her up needing another $10,000 to give her health care. It doesn't make much sense. So in closing, you know, we would appreciate and will continue to be willing to have a dialogue. I think this organization, which is about 55,000 strong, is not interested in a policy that is going to increase home heating and home utilities and gas prices and fuel prices. But if you're serious about trying to reduce carbon, we're serious about coming to the table. You know, you can do that right-of-way project and put a lot of people to work planting those right-of-ways, and firms out there who can do that work, and we can be a leader in green energy and greenhouse emissions, but we can do it without asking people for more money. So I will close this by asking you all, rhetorically, or you can choose to answer, is the goal of Senate Bill 1530 to fix the carbon problem in our state and in our world, or is it to raise revenue? And if it's really about fixing carbon, then we're going to be at the table with you. If it's about raising revenue, we're going to fight you every step of the way. Thanks.